what if I told you God cannot hear your words? Not because God is distant, not because you are forgotten, or because your devotion is lacking. The reality is far simpler, yet more profound. Words themselves are not the language of the divine. And yet, so many of us approach prayer as if it were a ledger, a cosmic mailbox where our requests, our fears, our hopes are deposited and repeated, sometimes for years. We recite, we plead, we insist, and often nothing seems to happen. This is the first misconception, that prayer is about asking, that it is about saying the right words, following the right order, or being persistent enough to get noticed. We have been taught to measure our devotion by repetition, to equate effort with effectiveness. But the more we rely on words alone, the more stagnant and frustrating the experience becomes. Why does it feel this way? Why, despite sincerity and effort, does prayer sometimes seem to vanish into silence? It is because traditional approaches focus entirely on content, the right words, the correct formulas, while overlooking something far more subtle. The energy behind the words, the state of the being offering them, the vibration you carry, all of that is what truly matters. Words are only signposts pointing toward intention. They are not the intention itself. And here is the truth, plain and simple. Prayer has never been about the words you speak. It is not about phrasing, timing, or repetition. It is about the state you bring, the resonance you carry, and the frequency in which your being exists. That is the measure of connection, and it is entirely invisible to the ear, entirely outside the mind's grasp, but it is the only thing that matters. Everything else, the lists, the recitations, the pleading, is just noise. Once we realize that words alone do not carry your prayers, the question naturally arises, if words aren't the point, then what is? What is it that actually reaches beyond the mind, beyond the noise, into the quiet fabric of life? The answer lies not in speaking, but in the state in which you exist. Prayer is not sent, it is broadcast. And the signal comes from you, from the subtle frequency of your own being. Every thought, every emotion carries vibration. Anxiety trembles with tension, fear tightens into constriction, frustration ripples in uneven pulses. Gratitude spreads softly, like light through water. Peace hums quietly, resonating without effort. And when you approach prayer, it is this subtle energy, this invisible tone, that communicates where words cannot. Your being, your feeling, your attention, all of it creates the frequency that can be received, not by ears, but by presence itself. This is why prayer can feel stagnant, even when your words are sincere. It is not that the universe is ignoring you, or that your devotion is insufficient. It is that the energy behind the words has not been tuned. Repetition cannot substitute for resonance. Asking cannot replace alignment. The posture of your inner world, the quality of the state you inhabit, determines whether your prayer lands in silence or begins to hum in harmony with something larger. You may have noticed moments when prayer seems to work without explanation. A sudden clarity, a subtle shift, a quiet nudge of intuition that feels almost like it comes from nowhere. These moments are not accidents. They are the effect of internal tuning, your frequency matching the current of life, even for a brief moment. Nothing was asked differently. Nothing was said differently. Only the state you carried, even subtly, created a channel for connection. And so the tension you have felt, the gap between asking and receiving, between effort and response, begins to make sense. The words were never enough. They were only the container, the outward form. What carries prayer is the internal signal, the energy, the vibration you offer. And even noticing that, even understanding that intellectually, begins to shift your perception. You begin to sense that tuning the inner world matters more than any outward ritual or repetition. Sometimes the shift in prayer is quiet, almost imperceptible. It comes not as a sudden answer, but as a subtle response in the world around you, a change in circumstance, a gentle clarity in thought, a moment when something inside finally settles. This is the echo of resonance, the world reflecting the alignment of your inner state long before any words are spoken. Consider a woman who had prayed for years about a difficult decision. She stopped trying to force clarity with lists of pros and cons or carefully crafted words. Instead, she sat with her uncertainty, paying attention to how she felt, noticing which thoughts weighed her down and which brought a sense of ease. Slowly, the answer arrived, not as a voice or sign, but as an unmistakable shift in how she perceived her options. Her prayer had been transformative, not because of what she said, but because of the way she was present. Or think of a man who had been seeking guidance in his work. Day after day, he went through the motions of asking, but nothing changed. One morning, he allowed himself simply to feel gratitude for the work he already had, for the people around him, for the small moments he often overlooked. By the next week, opportunities appeared that seemed perfectly timed, almost as if the world itself had responded. His prayer was not a monologue, it was a resonance that had been received. These are the echoes of divine resonance. They are not dramatic or immediate, but subtle and unmistakable. They are the experience of connection, a felt sense that your inner state matters far more than your words, and that transformation often begins in the quiet, almost invisible places within your own awareness. If prayer is more than words, more than lists and repetition, how do we begin to engage with it in a way that actually resonates? The first step is intention. Not the hurried, half-formed intentions whispered between tasks, but clear, deliberate focus, a willingness to bring your attention fully and to trust in the act itself. Intention is not about asking harder or louder. It is about being present in the act, believing that your inner state matters, and letting that belief guide the energy you carry. Next comes engaging the senses and imagination. Prayer need not be a silent monologue. You can visualize the state you wish to inhabit, picture the feeling of alignment, or imagine the presence of peace within and around you. Sensory experience, feeling gratitude in the body, noticing the warmth of breath, hearing the subtle silence between thoughts, anchors prayer in a living, tangible way. These practices do not replace words, but rather enhance the quality of attention you bring, allowing your inner frequency to harmonize with what is beyond the mind. Finally, there is the quiet power of reflection and journaling. Writing is a mirror for the inner world. Recording thoughts, feelings, and subtle shifts after prayer sessions allows you to notice patterns, to see where alignment arises naturally, and to recognize moments when your inner state has resonated beyond expectation. Reflection is not a task, but a gentle witness of your own experience, a way to deepen awareness of the subtle currents that guide transformation. Together, these steps form a foundation, setting intention, engaging the senses, and reflecting honestly on your own state. They are not formulas or guarantees, but invitations to step fully into your own presence, to notice the vibrational quality you bring, and to offer that state in quiet resonance. The power of prayer is found not in what is asked, but how it is offered. And these practices are ways to cultivate the inner conditions that allow that offering to be fully alive. Once the practice of elevated prayer begins, the challenge becomes not just starting, but continuing, integrating this awareness into daily life. The world pulls at us constantly. Old habits, old patterns, and the relentless pull of repetition can tempt us to return to the familiar, asking, pleading, listing, repeating. Yet true connection asks for presence, for alignment, for an ongoing attunement to the frequency of your own being. This is what it means to make him listen. God does not descend to the level of words or demands. God does not respond to repetition, lists, or insistence. God cannot come down to meet you where your vibration is stagnant or distracted. The invitation is radical in its simplicity. You must rise. You must cultivate the inner state, the clarity, the alignment, the resonance through which connection becomes natural. Prayer becomes a meeting, not a request. It becomes a rising of your own presence to meet the infinite. Consistency is key, but it is gentle consistency. Integrate moments of stillness, awareness, gratitude, and reflection throughout your day. Let these moments guide your actions, your attention, and your heart. Notice when you drift into the old patterns and return softly to the frequency that carries connection. There's no need for force, guilt, or pressure. The goal is not perfection. It is presence. The benefits over time are subtle yet profound. A quiet peace, clarity in decision and perception, a sense of purpose that feels not imposed but discovered. It is a feeling of being accompanied of resonance with something larger than yourself, of prayer that is alive and responsive. Not because you have demanded it, but because you have become the vessel through which life itself can move. If you feel drawn to explore this further, the rest of this channel is filled with gentle guidance, reflective meditations, and whispers for those learning to tune themselves to presence. Subscribe, linger, revisit the whispers that speak to your heart. Allow yourself the space to rise over and over until connection is no longer effort but a natural rhythm of your being. And so, in the softest, kindest way, do you understand now? You have been praying in the wrong language. God has not been ignoring you. God cannot come down to meet you. You must rise to meet him. Begin where you are, breathe into your presence, and let the alignment unfold. Quietly, tenderly, like a hand reaching back to meet yours.